Good evening, welcome to this Healing for Men live chat on Friday night. Good evening and hello to you. Hello if you're watching also on YouTube on the record. Glad to be with you today on this Friday evening. Finally there is rain coming down after a few weeks of dry weather. So, weather forecast from Britain, there you go. I hope you're doing well. Tonight we're going to talk about being a sensitive man. Being a sensitive man and what that is like. So good evening and welcome, and say hi in the chat if you're here listening and watching, and do put any comments in the YouTube if you're watching the replay. Being a sensitive man. Now, one of the things I was accused of once was being too sensitive in an argument with somebody. And it kind of got me thinking that actually at that precise moment, I felt like wearing the t-shirt, actually I am sensitive, and that's a good thing. And it caused me to start to realise, even at that point, that maybe I was sensitive, maybe I am sensitive. And maybe that's part of me, part of my character, part of my personality, part of my nature to be sensitive. And maybe a couple of years later, I delved into that a little bit by reading a book about The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron. And this week I've been rereading it again. And I thought it would be good to talk about what it might mean to be a sensitive man. Christelle's in the chat. Christelle, love that you're talking about this. Wish that it was discussed more often for when your boys were young. Thank you, Christelle. And that's probably something as well, that what's it like being a boy, a teenage boy, and being maybe aware of being sensitive and being different in that way. So let's start with it. Start with what it's like, what it means to be sensitive. And I thought I would start by looking at the book Highly Sensitive Person. And in here, Elaine Aron does a bit of a quiz. So I thought we'd do a few other questions about the quiz. And if you can answer some of these, I'm not going to do all of them, but some of them, and it may be that you might think and consider yourself to be sensitive as a result. So, true or false? You seem to be aware of subtleties in your environment. Other people's moods affect me. True or false? I tend to be very sensitive to pain. I find myself needing to withdraw during busy days into bed or a darkened room or any place where I can have some privacy and relief from stimulation. Particularly sensitive to the effects of caffeine. It may be that you are easily overwhelmed by things like bright lights, strong smells, coarse fabrics or sirens close by. I remember as a child, the feeling of touching like a wet wooden spoon on my fingers was like, it would just make almost like the touch equivalent of like the fingers on the chalkboard thing, but it almost was like my fingers were touching like lemon. It was horrible. I have a rich, complex inner life. I'm made to feel uncomfortable by loud noises. Deeply moved by the arts or music. I'm conscientious. I startle easily. I get rattled when I have a lot to do in a short amount of time. When I know people are uncomfortable in a physical environment, I tend to know what needs to be done to make it more comfortable, like changing the lighting or the seating. I get annoyed when people ask me to do too much at once. I try hard to avoid making mistakes or forgetting things. I make it a point to avoid violent movies and TV shows. I become easily pleasantly aroused when a lot is going on. Being hungry causes a reaction. I notice and enjoy delicate and fine scents, tastes, sounds and works of art. When I was a child, my parents or teachers seemed to see me as sensitive or shy. Now, they're not all of the indicators in this quiz, but if you are responding to some of those things and thinking, yeah, that was me, and I was, I could answer true to quite a few of those things. It may be, and even if you could only answer true, but strongly quite true to maybe just a small number of those, it may be that you could easily consider yourself to be sensitive or highly sensitive. And if you could answer true to all of those, then it may be that you are highly sensitive. And I wonder what, like, I could easily identify when I redid this test this week. I was probably about between 8 and 10, maybe 12 of those things. I don't remember exactly which ones, but definitely things like conscientious, rich, complex inner life, startled easily, sensitive to pain, and all these kind of things. So can easily consider myself to be sensitive, and I think some of that was always having to be aware of somebody else. So if you grew up in a place where you had to be aware of when somebody else was a danger to you, then you're more likely to be attuned to the way somebody else is feeling and the environment, and create, either soothing them and keeping yourself safe. But what does it mean to be a boy growing up in a safe world? Or not in a safe world, but being sensitive in a world. I think it's challenging to be almost the opposite of maybe expectations, but for a boy to be sensitive, messages that boys can often hear, maybe traditionally, maybe it's not the same nowadays, things like boys don't cry, or you need to be strong, or don't show your feelings, or you need to stand up for yourself. And I know what I did was to mask that sensitivity. I was always aware of it. I knew I was always aware of it. I was aware of that inner voice. I was aware of kind of having to soothe other people, be aware of the environment. I was aware of being conscientious and hardworking and quite in my own head at times. So I think I was aware of those things, and not that dissimilar to the introvert conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. But kind of being aware of that, but not having to hide it as well. So hiding that behind maybe macho sports like football, hiding that behind like having to stay strong, almost like disconnecting and disassociating with feelings, so that almost to hide the sense of feeling pain. So as a boy growing up, it was easier to hide because actually the expectations was that I needed to be something else to survive, or something else to be, to get on in life. Christelle saying that she's all but one, the caffeine, which ADHD people have the opposite effect. And then saying sensitivity in men is a gift. I'm seeing more cultivating of this gift in parenting boys now, but I didn't growing up. Yeah, thank you, Christelle, thank you. So how do we manage ourselves when we become aware of our sensitivity? Sometimes, and in the book, Elaine Aron talks about the balance between being in and being out. And the temptation can be to stay comfortable and stay in our safe surroundings, and fear going out. But what she also says is that that means that our gift of being sensitive is withdrawn, and we withdraw ourselves, and sometimes that can be an easy temptation. But we can actually contribute more by being out in the world and being ourselves and being much more aware of our sensitivity. She talks about how professions, caring professions, maybe like teaching and nursing and medicine, have been overtaken by images, or not images, but like the culture of performance and mask and data and outcomes. And that doesn't necessarily mean that people who are sensitive find a home or belonging in those places in the way they might have done. To accompany the kind of leader, they would have been the supporter, but even the way culture's gone. It's a bit like in the Quiet book about introversion that we talked about a few weeks ago. But the balance between being in and being out, if we go out all the time, we're often denying, and actually we're not treating ourselves well if we're sensitive, because we're forcing ourselves to be in an environment that over-arouses us or overwhelms us, because there's too many people, too many bright lights, too many noises, and that kind of can cause us to maybe not feel safe, but also we're just overwhelmed, and that's just part of how we're processing. And I can remember situations that I know caused me to just need to just get away from, because there's too much, too overwhelming, and so that was something. So I guess in a way I'm discovering myself as a kind of being sensitive, and just trying to work out what the strengths and gifts there are to being aware of being sensitive. And some of them can be that we're very conscientious, lots of thoughts and lots of contributions, because we can be more emotionally aware of what's going on and maybe the needs of others, but we also need to remember the needs of ourselves. And so that's something. And I'm just looking at something in the book that I wanted to share with us. And so managing our sensitive self is that balance between, a bit like introversion and extroversion, about being in a place where there isn't the noise. And I know when I'm overstimulated by like the noise of like the news, like that kind of noise can be overstimulating, and I don't want to listen to that anymore. So I tend to listen to music. Some of the ways we can look after ourselves is just to keep things much more simple. We can getting to know our sensitive side much more than just to get to know ourselves better. To not to necessarily to overprotect our sensitive side, but to allow it to have its space, and to be kind of creative, and to be intuitive, and to be important, and to be part of life. It's an interesting point here. Don't listen to all the people who say you spoil me, you know me, you decide. Yes, sometimes I might do better left alone to cry or to sleep, but trust your intuition. Sometimes you know I'm not too upset to be left alone. I do need a pretty attentive regular routine, but I'm not easily spoiled. Often it's easy to bully or to judge somebody who's sensitive, because that seems to be against the norm, being criticised of being too sensitive. And so we want to hide that sensitivity, and yet it's a gift, and yet and we play an important role in society because of that. So I'm just reading that this week. it's probably not been the best video talking about it, but I just wanted to share something about being a sensitive man, and to just raise awareness of sensitivity in men as a trait, as a character, and that it's a gift. And that for us to be aware of who we are as men, and to be confident in ourselves as men, to be vulnerable to that sensitive part of ourselves that we probably try and mask and hide, because it's better to, it may be the easy thing to be strong, but actually we know we need to look after ourselves in a different way and protect our sensitive side, as well as revealing it to the wider world because of its importance. So, men, look after yourselves. Thank you all for watching, for listening, either live or on the YouTube replay. And I'll see you all next week on the Healing for Men channel. Remember, the world is a better place when we are too. So thank you, and good night, and have a good weekend. Bye for now.